Welcome to Season 2 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive. Most of us have experienced challenging times in our lives, particularly over the last few months of 2020. The key is how we choose to respond, whether we merely survive or thrive. My name is Nicholas Steele, founder of JJP Talent Solutions, an Australian IT recruitment company. With over 20 years' expertise, I provide insights on how you can transform your career to the next level. The focus of Season 2 is around reinvention and how we can thrive in the new normal. In this podcast, I speak to experts from a variety of professions, including HR, technology, marketing, and business coaching. I don't have all the answers. However, collectively, we can instill hope, clarity, and inspiration. I hope you enjoy listening. I'm delighted to introduce Mike Clark. Mike is Queensland State Leader of Dent Global. Dent develops entrepreneurs to stand out, scale up, and make a meaningful impact in the world. He is also an author, speaker, and key person of influence. Mike, thank you for joining me on Season 2, Episode 1 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on here, Nicola. Great to be part of the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. So, Mike, please tell me more about your background and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been in business for the past 16 years, and effectively, I've always been in the training arena. So whether it was in the early years, we used to promote speakers, and used to be some personal development programs that we were involved with the promotion of. And so I took a business over to the UK, where I've been up until about 2 years ago when I moved home. But, it was pretty rapid baptism of fire of really just running large scale events from anywhere from like 50 to a couple thousand people over about a 5-year period. And I did some fun things, like we filled the London Palladium Theatre when we launched a couple speakers. So that's where it's just off Oxford Street in London. And it's owned by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it's where Phantom of the Opera at the time was being played. So
I've been there.
Okay. So you'd know, yes.
To see Phantom of the Opera, actually.
Amazing.
Many years ago.
Well, so imagine that theatre being filled with 2,000 business owners that we were launching some speakers with, who had not been in the UK. So and they had some really I found earth-shattering sort of insights around just how to overcome conflict and challenge in your life and so on. And so really sort of hit the ground, sort of took the market by storm, because nobody was doing that. They're always running events in like hotel venues and things like that. So, but then effectively over that sort of period of time, we had a pretty thriving business, and we're probably doing about 8 million in turnover before the financial crisis hit. And then effectively our business really just was halted. 3/4 of what we were doing stopped overnight. So we had to, using a Silicon Valley term, we had to pivot quickly. And, and effectively my good friend and business colleague, Daniel Priestley, he created a book called Key Person of Influence. And it was based on our experience of working with highly influential business leaders. And, some of the events I was involved in promoting with speakers like Richard Branson and, Sir Bob Geldof, who, obviously with all the stuff they did with Live Aid and obviously his career. And so we just sort of observed these sort of traits that people have between them, in terms of how they sort of stand out effectively in the marketplace. And so we've codified that sort of methodology, and there's 5 sort of principles to it, obviously of which you're familiar with, Nicola. And so now we sort of in the current form are just support business owners so they can stand out and, as you said, scale up so they can make their dent in the universe.
Fantastic. And how incredible meeting Sir Richard and also Sir Bob Geldof as well. That must have been fantastic.
Yeah, it's always very short and brief when you're doing big scale events and things of that nature. So it's very, very, very brief interlude. So
yeah, wow. So Dent creates key people of influence. So Tell me more about that concept.
Yeah, sure. So what we observed, because let me put it another way, is that when we were running all these events, what we noticed is that a lot of business owners were in particular market. Doesn't matter if you're a business coach or you're a personal trainer or you're a mortgage broker or an accountant, a lawyer. So a lot of the sort of traditional industries is where we specialize in. And what we observed is that a lot of these people, when we're running these events, 10 plus years ago in the UK, is that they'd be coming to us, and when we'd ask them what they were doing, they'd be saying things like, I'm an accountant or I'm a solicitor. And it was very what we call functional, the way that they would communicate. And a lot of them were after a way to create a breakthrough in their market, but they were in highly competitive marketplaces. And so what we saw is that the way that they showed up in terms of just how they presented themselves was completely different to the way that the speakers that we were promoting. And so there's this stark difference between how certain business people can show up in the world effectively. And so what what we observed is that there's these 5 traits that people who have influence, they consistently have, and they do really well. And the first thing is that that underpins everything is they know their marketplace really well. They know the market that they serve better than the market knows themselves. And as a result of that, they're able to create a pitch where they can stand out and create cut through, and they communicate instead of like a functional way, like saying, I'm an accountant. They communicate in a different way and say, well, I'm an accountant, but what I specialize in is showing business owners how to get cashed up so they can get more money, time, and happiness in their life. There's a 7-step methodology to achieving that. It's like, oh, okay, that's different. What's that about? And so what they get really good at is pitching ideas into the world. And those ideas give them differentiation and cut through in the marketplace. And then what they do is they package those ideas up in the form of written books and publish content and things like this in podcasts. And, and they get known for their ideas, and their ideas travel much faster than the products that they promote. So if anyone's only got so much bandwidth to hear an accountant say, I'm an accountant, what do you do? Well, tax and advising. It's like, okay, well, that's a very brief conversation if you're not really interested in it. It's a different conversation. So, well, actually, yeah, I'm an accountant, but you know what? We specialize in helping, business owners to actually get cashed up. So and we actually measure how they have more time, money, and happiness in their business. So, that's interesting. What's that about? And not only that, we make, we have a campaign where every time we make a tax saving $1, we actually provide a day of clean drinking water for somebody in a developing nation. So they have these different ways to differentiate, and that's an example of one of a client of ours in terms of how they pitch. And then effectively, it's then publishing content, creating a range of products where they don't trade their time. A lot of the trap we find with small business owners is that they abstract like the value delivery of the business into them. And sometimes I hear, and quite often actually I hear business owners will say, well, clients want me, they want my time. And the reality is nobody wants your time. Nobody wants my time. Nobody wants your time, with the greatest level of respect, Nicola.
Thank you.
But I mean, and likewise for myself, and it goes for every single business owner, is what they're after a result, and so if we as a business owner show up as being the result, well, then that's why they say they want your time. But the way we get out of it is we actually deconstruct and sort of unpack a lot of what we call products and create an ecosystem of products where you create a product that delivers that value for a set individual. And it takes it out of from instead of you trading time for it, you can have a product that delivers that, or somebody else in your team can deliver that product on your behalf. So didn't mean that disrespectfully there, Nicola.
No, not at all. I didn't take it that way.
Yeah.
And I understand completely what you mean, because I've been very much in that place myself, and you feel like you're constantly chasing your own tail as a business owner, particularly if you're the sole person within the business, that it is you that has to do all the delivery.
Yeah, and so and I'm happy to sort of wrap that up. But effectively, the sort of the fourth area is about raising someone's profile, and then securing partnerships, which is the ultimate trust and scalability of oneself and of a business. And so these things, what we've noticed with these highly influential leaders, are just the key components that allow somebody to really create cut through, stand out in their industry, and move into the top 5 to 10% of their industry. And that's what we call becoming a key person of influence. So, that's a bit more detail around the background of it all.
That's fantastic. And also on the subject of partnerships, I'm not sure about you, but I'm certainly finding at the moment, people are much more open to having those partnerships, or at very least having that conversation to see if there's any synergy there and what have you. Yeah, it seems to be bringing people more together, less judgmental, more transparent, etc.
Just an interesting insight on that one, Nicola, is that if you think about why do partnerships work so effectively in the first place, it's because there's a trust transference, and so it means that if you do something really well and you build a community of people who are following you, Nicola, and and you've got the attention of whether it's hundreds or thousands of people, and and then if you and I did something together, and then all of a sudden you can leverage your trust and say, listen, this is really excellent, I highly recommend it, and vice versa. If I did the same in exchange for you, and effectively what we're doing is we're able to leverage one another's trust. And I think now more than ever, business owners, and not just business owners, I mean, people are when they're in a state of fear, which is what happens with a pandemic or an economic crisis, people revert back to sources and people where they know, like, and trust them. So that's why I think it's so valid right now, is because it's potentially more difficult to go out to win new business where there's no trust. But if we can collaborate with one another and, sort of form those relationships, effectively what we're doing is we're transferring trust from yourself and onto others and in the marketplace. And that's what people are looking for, is trusted sources of information and knowledge and just strategies and ideas and things that'll just work.
Yeah, because obviously in times of uncertainty, you do turn to people that you know and trust. The other thing I was going to say is I introduced you as an entrepreneur, or you helping entrepreneurs. Now, we hear that term a lot. So what does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, again, really interesting question, because we toy around with using the word entrepreneur, but it's funny, I've tested this a lot of times over the years, and there's somewhat of a disconnect I find with people who, I've met people who've got like a business that'll be doing 5 million plus turnover, and even someone I know who's come to mind that's got very rocking, like double that turnover. And, and I was talking to him at one point about the idea of being an entrepreneur, and he's like, I don't see myself as an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. And so I think there's almost this not fantasy, but it's almost like this idea that we have of what an entrepreneur is. But effectively for me, an entrepreneur is just anyone who's playing a game of solving the problems of a marketplace. And so that for me is, business owners, I believe, are entrepreneurs. And what it means is that, you've got the gumption to be out there to, have the will and the fortitude and the spirit. I think the word entrepreneur comes from the French word inspirer or something like that. I remember hearing that once, is that it's the spirit and the passion that we need to have. And so I think sometimes people think that being an entrepreneur needs to be that you're Mark Zuckerberg, or you're, you've got a Silicon Valley technology company that's disrupting, numerous industries. Whereas in my opinion, I believe anybody who's bold enough to say, you know what, the marketplace has a problem out there, I believe I can solve it, and I'm willing to back myself to go out there and solve it and take on the risk that it may not work, and take on the risk of, putting in money into, different things, from websites to marketing to branding to everything else. Like, you're taking on risk, and I've got the utmost respect for entrepreneurs, and or if someone doesn't see themselves an entrepreneur, a business owner who's doing those things, because it does take a lot of courage, and it's a different mindset overall from just going out there and just having the safety and the comfort of just an income from a fairly reliable source. Although at the moment in these sort of times, there's a lot of uncertainty out there regardless. But that's my take of an entrepreneur.
Which, that's great. And actually it's quite interesting. You bring up the risk, and then if you work for a big company, you've got the security. However, now that might not necessarily be the case. And can you give me some examples of companies where entrepreneurs really grew and thrived, or companies during previous recession?
Absolutely. And just before I do that, though, just sort of tapping on that idea of risk, I feel that now what we're going to see is more of a flurry of people coming out and starting their businesses, because there's already been a massive trend of innovation and entrepreneurship, or business owners starting on their own. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in 2013 there were 400 million entrepreneurs in the world. This year, we're set to crack the 1 billion mark.
Wow.
Which is pretty phenomenal. And, and here in Australia, we had in 1995, 250,000 businesses. Last year, or actually 2018, there were 2.3 million business owners. And I think what we're going to see off the back of this is that if you give people enough time, technology, and ability to just sort of sit around and identify what areas of their life they're just have unfulfilled, or that they see an opportunity in, that we're going to see more and more people taking that opportunity up to go out and start a business, because it's easier and somewhat safer than ever before. Because in years gone by, if you want to set up an accountancy business, as an example, you'd have to get an office, you'd have to hire a receptionist, you'd have to have overheads of 50 to maybe 100 grand before you even got started. Whereas now it's like, hey, I just set up a company and away we go. So, and so and particularly doing business and through podcasts, virtual meetings, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I think we're going to see a surge of entrepreneurship. Definitely that'll be cascade through this. And that sort of leads into your question, which is about, recessions are actually opportunity in disguise, I believe. From going through the financial crisis, were you there, Nicola? I think you were.
I was in the UK. And recruiting in London and the southeast, and it was almost like a physical feeling as it just plummeted. I don't think it was quite as bad here in Australia as it was over there in the UK.
It's been really fascinating. I've been talking to a number of people, and they've thrown lines that, we haven't really seen it as big an impact, over the years. This is our first real, economic impact. I'm like, are you kidding me? If you were in the UK, like you said, it was horrific. It was pretty brutal. And, people losing their pensions, people, just businesses shutting down. I said 3/4 that we had stopped selling. We maxed out our the cash that we had, cash reserves we had. Anyway, so going through at a different time, and second time round going through quite called a catastrophic change, is that you can sort of see it with a different set of eyes, I think. And you can look back and you can say, well, actually, what happened that last recession? And in answer to your question, here's just a bit of homework I'd give anybody to just check out. Do a search for the founding dates of the following company, like when these companies were founded, okay? If you look at WhatsApp, Instagram, Dropbox, Slack, Airbnb, just to name a few. If you look at all of those founding dates, they're all between 2009 and 2011, which is which is where this sort of period that we're the equivalent of the period that we're about to enter into now. And so there've been more billion-dollar companies created over the last 10 years than I heard in all of history combined. Now, that seems like a pretty far stretch, right? Whether it's true or 100% accurate, but there's, but the idea here is that there's been more billion-dollar companies created in this past decade since the recession than in any time in history, without doubt. Recessions create more millionaires than in any time in history. And coming off the back end of this, we are actually in an 18-year bull run whereby this decade is set to create more wealth than in any time in history. And there's some really strong fundamental reasons for that. There's some macroeconomic reasons for that as well. But it's really fascinating to see that if we are of a mindset right now to see the opportunity from it all, there's going to be 3% of people inside any industry. And it's very specific. It's 3% of business owners inside any industry that, if they choose to be wiring themselves into the opportunity and seeing how technology is going to disrupt their industry, and that they actually lean into that, then effectively they'll be the ones that will allow them to will ride that next wave and gain some, not just market share, but just have a business that's more fulfilling for them.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know at the moment there are a lot of people having it really tough, whether it be with health, losing their jobs, losing their incomes. But personally, I find it really quite an exciting time. We've got the time to think, the time to strategize, and the time to reinvent as well. And I think this is something that you've very much been talking about over the last few weeks, about this period of reinvention. So what advice would you give to not just survive, but also thrive in the current conditions and beyond that?
Great question. And I think the starting point I would lead with is get some perspective, because perspective is critical. Your mindset is critical in this stage more than ever, because there's three sort of core components of our brain. There's the amygdala limbic system, which links to fight, flight, or freeze. That's where the cortisol is released. That's where if you watch too much media and social media and you're following every single update about COVID and everything like that, it's like, oh, and it's happening in Spain, it's happening in the UK, and it's like, it's debilitating. That energy will consume you, and there's very minimal creativity, almost no creativity when your amygdala is kicked in. When you're in a fight, flight, or freeze situation, it sends those sort of those chemicals to our body. The monkey part of our brain is one which is designed to sort of just it's for comfort. So if our amygdala is triggered, it'll trigger a lot of negative thought processes in our brain. It'll be like, oh, why does it just go back to the way it was? This is uncomfortable. Oh, poor me. There's kids running around everywhere and all this sort of stuff. But anyone who's thinking like that, poor me. Like my wife said to me the other day, we're driving through, I forget where it was, and she said, oh, imagine these people here. They're in these houses, and I feel so sorry for them. I said, I don't. I said, I feel sorry for the kids in Kenya. Who've got no water. I feel sorry for the people in India who are crammed into a teeny house. Said, I don't feel sorry for anyone here in Australia. We've actually got it good. We're living in luxury right now. So, anyways, that's just my perspective.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I read as well is, can you imagine if you were born in 1900? So you had the First World War, then you had that the Spanish flu pandemic.
Yeah.
Then you had the Great Depression.
Yep.
Then you had the Second World War. And then there was Vietnam, the Cuban Missile Crisis, etc., etc. I mean, that was pretty bad.
And there's nowhere near the levels of government support that are provided.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that disrespectfully for what I said. I don't feel sorry for anyone here in Australia. I mean, I obviously I'm empathetic for people who have situations where it's been radically changed in their business and their circumstances. I absolutely have compassion for those people. My point is that I just feel that we are in the top. If you are earning more than $100,000 a year, you are in the top 0.2% of people, wealthy people in the world. Right. So most people listening to this are at least earning probably 50 to 80 to 100 grand or more, which means that we're in the top 0.5%, of people in the world. So, I think we just got to have a sense of gratitude for that as well. And so I think perspective right now is really important, because if we can have that sense of gratitude, and if we can be thinking about the next thing I've got is perspective, but then it links to the third part of the brain, which is the visionary part of ourselves, which is the visionary part of ourselves is the one that for anyone who is in business, that was the foolish part of you that had that great idea to get into business. It was like, yeah, we can do this. And so it's the visionary part of ourselves is where things are in flow, when things just feel like they're coming together naturally, effortlessly. And when you're in that state, what you're typically doing, you're not fearful of the past, you're reverse engineering the future. You're thinking, well, wow, this could be exciting. We could be doing this in the business, and it would allow us to do this with our lifestyle. And we could be making that impact. And effectively, I think that if we can be in that space of appreciation, and it's hard at times. Like, don't get me wrong, I have days where I'm sort of beating myself up, and I'm actually wallowing in my own self-pity at periods of time, because there's a lot to deal with at the moment. But what snaps me out of it is when I go, hang on, all right, let's get a bit of perspective, and then I get excited about, like, I'm consciously creating a lot of time in my world right now where I'm creating stuff. That's where the season of reinvention episodes came from, Nicola, that you've seen. I was getting up in the morning and I was researching. I was finding the founding dates of WhatsApp and these guys. I'm like, holy crap! The opportunity here is massive for those business owners that actually lean in and get excited about this. And so we've just got to know that, yes, we've got to have some difficult conversations and difficult things and the potential that are going on in our world right now. And at the same time, to be going, well, what do I want my future to look like? What if I could reverse engineer where I'd want to be in a few years' time? What would need to change? What would need to happen? And that's why I really do. I get inspired by people like yourself, Nicola, who, I really do, because I know that in your business you've had a sharp downturn, but instead of going like, oh, hang on, Paul, woe is me, you go, hang on, what if this is the perfect time to jump out there, support more people, get excited about, some other things that are going on, share that knowledge and that insight, and be of service to others. And, and now you're creating this amazing program that can sort of, engage and touch and support other people. And many business owners would be saying, woe is me, but now you're choosing to use this time to reinvent yourself and your business. So you're going to be one of those 3% of businesses that in 12 months' time, the people who are going head in the sand, I hope it's going to go back to the way it was. It's not. And they're going to be following and joining people like you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And my whole purpose behind this was really about helping people. This was back in March when we all felt, when it first hit Australia, and I felt quite helpless. And the best way to overcome feeling helpless is helping people, which is where the idea, and I've met so many interesting people and got new networks, new friends as a result of doing this. It's been quite incredible. And again, it's been very much based on my perception and mindset, and not having that doom and gloom. And I think as well, you've got a family too. If you're as the head of the household, or as husband and wife as head of the household, if you're doomy and gloomy, it brings the whole family down too. And it's just constantly in that frame of mind. So
that's why other piece of advice I'd recommend: turn the telly off. Like, turn the telly off. Don't tune in. If you want to get the updates, get the app. Just find out what you need to know to stay safe. But I haven't watched TV for a long time. I have a couple of TVs in my house, just so I can actually more watch sports. That's my thing. But I just don't watch the media, and I don't get. I'm on social media, but I'm very mindful, and I just notice my energy. If all of a sudden I just get distracted and I let myself just scroll through the threads and everything like that, I notice my energy just get.
That's what I was going to say. More creating rather than consuming. And I don't know whether I've heard that from you or more generally, that if you're creating rather than consuming, again, that puts you in that better kind of frame of mind.
Well, just on that point, Nicola, is that it's really fascinating. I was talking to a friend last night, actually, and he's mentioning to me, he said, everybody I'm speaking to is, and he's sort of really concerned, doom and gloom, and really worried, and and I said, oh, really? That's not the world I live in. I have always, not always, but since when we ran these events in the UK to now, I've been in somewhat of a bubble in that, with the clients that we attract, they're all business owners that are in that top 3% that believe they can reinvent, that can change their business. So my day yesterday was working with all of them in their businesses. Most days are actually consulting, advising, working with business owners that are kicking goals, that are doing great things. And what I've found really fascinating about this period is that when I talk to them and we just have sort of sideline chats, I've just mentioned to a couple of them, I've said, hey, do you find that, like just getting really incredible like creativity right now? And they're like, yeah, like it's amazing. Yeah. It's like this, you either use this time to wallow, or you use this time to sort of dust yourself off and go, cool, what could we recreate? Where's the opportunity here? And sort of let your mind go on that space. And the creativity levels I'm finding for business owners is off the charts, and more so than usual time, I think, because our clients consciously choose to reinvent themselves. Our business, as a charity, was born in the GFC 10 years ago. However, now business owners are, not everyone, but a lot of business owners are forced to reinvent themselves. So it's sort of when the rubber hits the road and you've got no other option, you just got to get on with it.
Completely. Absolutely. And with that in mind, can you give me some examples of companies that you've already seen reinvent themselves in the current crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. I can share a whole bunch. Well, there's one I did the podcast, not a podcast. It'll likely turn into a podcast, but it was the Facebook Live with Sebastian Bates, and so he's got a martial arts business, and he was in South Africa when I think, and he's living in Dubai. He's based from the UK but living in Dubai. And he was in South Africa when the announcement came out that they're about to go into lockdown. So he had to fly back and just get in. And then he literally, it wasn't quite lockdown. It was like staged lockdown going, but he could see it coming. And he, obviously all his stuff besides his promotional stuff was online, but not all his delivery was in person at the studios. And he saw that this was coming, that it would kill his business. And I think he lost the equivalent of like $250,000 overnight. And so phenomenal what he did. He jumped out and he did 10 days straight of filming content where he recorded 7 years of content. And
7 years. Wow.
7 years of content inside 10 days. And he finished it the day before they literally enforced, like, you could not leave your house. So he couldn't have done it. Had he done it any later, he wouldn't have finished it. And so he's recorded every single, you've got all the belts, white belt, yellow belt, brown belt, etc. He's recorded every single exercise and activity that you need to do in order to progress from complete startup to black belt.
Wow. So
he shot that inside 10 days. So that's one. Another one is someone from our community. And so Mel is her name. She has this brilliant company that was helping business owners to fit out their sort of workplace design and would help businesses who were sort of relocating business or had to, they outgrew their existing business, and she'd help them make sure they optimize their workplace performance. So she's in the last literally weeks has just leaned in heavily about helping businesses to actually now gear up for virtual and remote teams. So she's pivoted incredibly quickly to support businesses in that nature to now, sort of, because you can imagine you've got an office and your mentality is everybody must work from the office, right? And so now all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, we've all got to work from home. How do we do that? Privacy, cybersecurity, businesses are going nuts right now. They're having it's an absolute heyday for them. And so anyway, so she's in that space and she's pivoted very quickly, got some serious traction from helping and supporting companies to do that. And the final one I'll share with you is actually my cousin. My cousin, I've been chatting with him. He's got this business called Epic Events. And Epic Events is he's been to all the anyway, they're in the events game for running fun runs and things of that nature. And so obviously his business is just stopped overnight, not allowed to do any of the fun runs, any of the cycling, cycling events and everything they were going to do. And so we were chatting about this idea about choosing time to reinvent. He's got this brilliant story where he literally was about to sit down and fill out the JobKeeper application forms. And then he was like, screw this is going to take me like 6 hours. and so he said, well, what do I do instead? So he said, I'm going to sit down for a couple of hours and just think about how I could just get my business out of this. And then he came and talked about collaboration. And he'd actually tried to run a virtual event. It was a virtual cycling event, I think, earlier in the year, but it was just the market wasn't ready for it. And so he's gone on to, and so effectively the event was he had experience in it, but it didn't really work that well. And so he had this relationship there and he wasn't planning on doing anything with it. And then he reached out and said, hang on, what if there's an opportunity to actually do virtual fun runs and things like that? And so then he's gone out, reached out to this company again. They said, yep, they've formalized a new company. They raised a decent 5-figure amount. I won't share the exact amount, but a decent 5-figure amount from Adidas as an immediate sponsor. They've gone on, they've now got 200 schools registered for a fun run, and now they're securing some serious sponsorship levels from some household name brands.
That is absolutely incredible. And that came through thinking, I really can't be bothered to fill in this terribly boring form.
Yeah.
So, wow.
So that's what I'm saying. If we're open and receptive right now, now is the time to innovate and create. And now is the time for a lot of businesses that are potentially dead in the water to think about, like in my cousin's case, where it's like, hang on, what is the opportunity here? Hang on. And there's big companies now, big organizations, that do sponsor these events, like your Woolworths and things like that. They've got budgets of millions and millions of dollars that typically have now been stopped. So, so where is the opportunity if we can see that inside your industry, and potentially what is the missing piece of the next reinvention of your business, and who might have some technology or the database or an innovation in your product that you could create that, if you teamed up with them, would then mean that you could, start something new that would be highly relevant in the marketplace. Because here's the thing, is that we're only in business to solve a problem. The problems that you potentially solved before might not be around or be as relevant. And now the question that just needs to be asked is, what are the new problems the marketplace has? And then what does that solution need to look like? Where you can start by serving, but then serve, which with the outcome could lead to a new business opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, as we have this time to reflect, you're seeing a lot of socially responsible businesses coming out of it as well.
100%.
That's awesome, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Is there anything else that you'd like to share at all?
No, that's a dangerous question to ask me, Nicola. To be completely frank, I mean, I could share quite a lot. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I believe the businesses need to be reinventing in 5 key areas of the business, potentially even 6. The first area being their niche, the second area being, who they serve, the second area being, the pitch. How does your pitch need to change and evolve? What new published content do we need to be creating? From also, what's a range of products that you need to be innovating in right now? How do you innovate on your profile by doing things like this and podcasts and social media, and what new awards could you be up for and stuff like that? And in particular, like we've touched on already, partnerships is a real key for innovation right now. So I can go deeper into all of those things, but as a high level summary, and respectful for your time and others.
Well, thank you. And I'll share your book as well, or Dan Priestley's book, The Key Person of Influence, that's got all that information in the show notes, so people can access that.
Well, if anyone's interested in getting a free copy of the book, I'd be happy to send a copy of you. If you're in Queensland, definitely. If it's outside of Queensland, it'd be more ebook. But yeah, definitely happy to offer a free copy of the book.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you very much. And it's this final thing. It's been great to be on here, Nicola. I appreciate that. And I hope everyone tuning in has gotten some value from it. If you're interested at all in delving into, how to innovate further, I run a sort of a regular web class on that, where I do a deep dive into innovation and reinvention. So it's just www.kpiqld. So it's KPIQLD. So Key Person of Influence Queensland is short for kpiqld.com.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike.
You're a star. Thanks a lot for that. And I hope that's added value to the life of people listening in.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're looking for career advice, your next career opportunity, or to grow your tech team, then please call me, Nicola Steele, on 0499 773 546. Or go to our website, jjptalent.com.au. The Don't Just Survive, Thrive podcast is part of the Spotlight series, which includes the YouTube channel, Spotlight on Software Development. If you want more insights into the software industry, particularly tech startups, then subscribe to the Spotlight on Software Development YouTube channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time.